Alright guys, so I just finished up a long print, about 7 hours, and as you can see my temps are about 43, dropping pretty quick. They were bouncing about 43 to 44 during the entire print. Both probes are registering the same temperature. So I'm going to turn off the printer. See, it's dropping pretty quick there. And now you can hear, sorry, you can hear the tension of the strings. Much tighter. Get my light going here. That, my friends, is why I think people are having breakages on their printers. Because that string is significantly tighter. The rails are warm. Everything in here is warm. That's extremely tight. I moved the carriage around. So that's all I did from the last video to this video, was do a long print. And the temperature is dropping. And as things cool down, these cables will return to normal, to where they used to be before I started this print. So when you tension your tension brackets to the point where you're getting notes that you can pluck out of these strings before you start a print, and then you start a print, you can pretty much guarantee that that string is going to be getting really tight. And this Kevlar string is a very high tensile strength, and it's not going to just break by pulling on it. If it breaks, it's due to usually abrasion or something like that, rubbing on. They like to rub right inside these little holes here. If you look, you can see a little bit of the extrusion rail right there, and if your spools aren't centered on your shaft correctly, when the carriage moves around, the string walks up and down. You can see it walking up and down the spools here. It'll rub on the extrusion. That's what I have going on with this printer over here. I have another printer here. Sorry about the sidetrack here, but if you look at this one, if I move this carriage all the way over, you can see it rubbing. It is clearly rubbing on that extrusion rail right there. That is what will cause your strings to break. So make sure your spools are centered in the middle of your extrusion. Anyways, so back to this. It's already softening back up. It's still tight, but it's definitely not getting as tight. Or not, it's not as tight as it was before I opened the printer up. So that's why I say guitar tuning, these string drives and all that fancy stuff to try to get your tension just right is kind of irrelevant, because when you close this enclosure door here and you start a hot print, that tension changes, and it's pretty obvious that that's what happens here. So anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to do with these videos here, was kind of show y'all my theory as to why these parts are breaking. When you have the idlers pulling out and the ABS is actually breaking by, it looks like something struck it, or somebody pulled on it, or the carriage, you know, the anchor blocks have been ripped right from the carriage. This is probably one of the reasons why it might be happening. I would definitely check your cable tension, make sure it's not too tight. I think if you have your string to the point where you can pluck it and hear a note at room temperature, you're probably going to be way too tight when you're actually in the middle of a print. So that was, just so you know, ABS, and I printed at 100-degree bed temp. My hot end temp was 250 C. And if you notice, I have this filter here, this HEPA charcoal filter. You can see the temp is dropping quite a bit. Things are still warm in there, but the ambient temperature has dropped. So these filters, I think, are another problem as to why the heat is building up in these things. Anybody who has these, I think they clog real fast. You can see all the dust on there. I don't even use mine. I have this huge carbon scrubber right here to handle fumes. But this, I just kept it on to simulate the scenario that most people have. I think evacuating the air inside the chamber is, evacuating it too fast is not good, because you want some ambient heat in there. I think you want as much as you can. I think the only amount of air you want to be evacuating out of here is basically by this fan, is just enough to put negative pressure on your whole machine so that fumes aren't coming out through the cracks and leaking out. So you want that to be filtered out. And I think what's happening is these are getting clogged up. They clog up real fast, and they don't blow air through there. And if they're not moving air through there, then the heat is collecting inside and building up like a convection oven almost. As you can see here, it raised 25 degrees Celsius, according to two different temperature sensors that I had mounted in there next to the string. And that is enough to cause your cable to get really tight. So you can hear it's starting to loosen up a little bit. Still tight, but it is definitely loosening up